Hello, selectors, and a happy Wixoss Ceremony to everyone.
Yay!
It made me sound like Saint Nicholas. What is Saint? What is the Wixoss? I guess they
Merry Ceremony.
Merry
everyone.
Ceremony. We're a little brain dead. I'm gonna be honest with you. It was like last time was long rounds, but I feel a little bit less brain dead than last time.
Yeah, when it gets easier the more you play games back to back, for sure.
It's true. We did practice a bit more games back to back.
We did.
So
it's like running a marathon. You have to like stretch out and limber up for it.
Yeah. So we're gonna here to talk about the ceremony. We're gonna talk about how well we did in it, and we're also gonna be talking about meta analysis updates, as well as some just like
highlights,
deck updates that we would do, and also to talk about me. I got 5th place at the ceremony with Nova.
Now, normally I would call you out for like that being like a really egotistical, like we're gonna talk about me, but like you kind of deserve it. You did really great.
I made one misplay, and if I didn't make that misplay, I would have been undefeated. But
let's get into
that's the way it goes.
That's the way the life bursts.
But you know, like you learn from your losses too.
Podcast.
Yeah. So, Tiffany.
Yeah.
We'll keep it brief because I know you're still a little raw from it. But how did you do at the ceremony?
I did absolutely not great. I had 2 wins. One was a bye. And it was an incredibly rough ceremony, honestly. A lot of the games were very close, and one of them resulted in a double loss, which was beyond irritating, I have to say. But I'm not particularly angry at how I played necessarily, because I do feel like I made really good decisions. And I was also, trying to stretch my wings a bit in terms of my player abilities, and I played a different deck than I normally do. So instead of playing Card Jockey, Lion, or Love It, I played Musica with a full diagram team. And like I said, all of the games were very close. And, there were certain things that I learned. The strangest thing is that I only went up against 2 no-limit decks, and all of the rest of them were Card Jockey.
That's true. I actually did mostly Card Jockey as well.
All the rest of them were Lion, except for 1 Wolf. So that felt really strange to me.
Yeah, there was an insane amount of Card Jockey this time around.
So, but there were some like little things that I learned, but I'm gonna be honest, it was pretty harsh. I was in a real bad mood by my like final round.
I'm happy to publicly state that I'm proud of you. I think that you're learning more about the deepness of the game. And this is your 2nd competitive tournament ever. So
like ever.
I know.
That's
true.
So
stretching out of the idea of I'm aggro and I'm turning things sideways is, I think, really big player growth for you. But we won't have to focus on the negatives. We can focus on some positives. You said one of your favorite things that you happened at the ceremony was the interaction with the community.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to August, who also goes by Autumn, as well as Tommy. They were my first and last rounds, and I probably would have had a way worse like time mentally with this ceremony if it wasn't for players like you.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you guys came in with a stellar attitude. Like, you were so excited and ready to play. And, right away you told me, oh my God, I watch your podcast. And, like, that really meant so much to me. And, like, especially in the last round, like I said, I was in, like, a really bad mood. But then, Tommy swung in with this, like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Like, let's play a great game. And then we chatted, like, a little bit before and after the game. And it just, like, I don't know. The reason why I keep coming back to this game is because of what a great community this is.
Yeah.
And we've said this before, but like really this is it's just everyone's so nice and like hyped to fight each other with these wild singing, dancing, magical girls, and none of the flavor makes sense, but the gameplay is really cool and everyone's just so positive and upbeat. So thank you very much August, and Tommy. You guys honestly helped make my ceremony.
Yeah, I wish I could give specific shout outs on my end of the world too. It's just there's so much that happened. It was a blur, and I ended up being really, really, really in the zone for this one.
Yeah.
So names are gonna escape me, and I don't have the even memory of remembering who I went up against, or what round I went up against certain people. So that way I can't even know if I'm saying the right names here or crediting the wrong person. The only person I can give a shout out to is the person I lost to on stream, which was,
you can go watch.
Which I checked to see who it was, because again, it's my loss. So it was Casey. And good for Casey. Okay. Yeah. He was also excited to see me. He was like, listen to the podcast. I like what you guys do. And I was like, oh, super excited. Oh, now we're on stream. Oh, I get really nervous. And he was like surprised, because he was like, well, you don't seem like the person that would get nervous. And I was like, I didn't eat anything this morning. I barely had anything to drink, because I get like violent nerves when it comes to, and it's like a serious thing. I went infinite on MTGO and MTGA, right? Because I am not terrible at that game. But every time I would go to like a GP or something, I would get too nervous to be actually able to play.
It's really nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I shoot myself in the foot. I've never actually had a good tournament experience, which this is new for me. I got 5th place, and this is the highest ranking at a big tournament I've ever gotten in my life.
Which is really saying something, because you are really talented at Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, but the nerves always get the better of me. Even last time, right? The last ceremony, I went 3 wins, 3-0. I was on a great track, and then I lost an incredibly narrow game, and then I just down spiraled.
Yeah.
And
the last ceremony was a learning curve for sure.
This time, right, my big focus on for this tournament was, aside from being super proficient in the metagame and trying to get good, was also to just be good. I need to become a better player and see things and manage resources. Nova's not an easy deck to pilot, guys.
No.
And you have to manage their hand. You have to manage their enter. You have to manage what's on their field. You have to manage their life cloth, right? You need to know when to step on the gas. You need to manage your hand. You need to manage your enter. You need to manage your trash as well, because you interact with your trash as well. And so there's so many, and time. That's the other thing, is I had to actually keep up a stopwatch to check for slow play, which no one ever did in slow play in my rounds, which was great. And also for timing around, because I knew I was going to get close to it. Weirdly enough, my fastest matchup was against the Nova Mirror. Because we both were like, okay, 30 second rounds, let's go. And we knew we had to go fast.
Sometimes it just has to be like that.
Yeah,
honestly, I wish I had kept a closer eye on my time with some of the rounds I was in, because almost every single one of my rounds went to overtime, except that one where I got a double loss.
Well, that's the thing, is I have an aggro mindset. Like, I know it seems like I'm super repping Nova, and I did well with Nova. I'm not a control player. I do not like thinking that far ahead. I do not like managing all the resources. I like to either win fast or lose fast and get a sandwich. That's what I like doing. And I could not autopilot at all with Nova. But I grew, I think, a little bit from this experience and prepping from this experience. And I'd say to anyone who's struggling to get over a hurdle of like the top 32, because I was on the bubble last time.
That's quite a steep hill to climb.
Literally 64th. I was on the bubble last time.
Yeah.
One point off, I wouldn't have gotten top 64. And I was like, I want to do better. And my goal was top 32. I was not expecting top 5.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I put the effort in, and I had all my locals help me put the effort in. Some people on Discord as well. But I really was open, was like, this is what I'm running. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Help me.
That's what community's about.
I watched some Japanese YouTube too for advice, because I was losing my every game with Nova, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? Turns out I was playing a piece wrong.
Gotcha. And which piece was that? Or should we save that for later?
End of turn. We'll talk about it though.
Okay.
But yeah, I do want to stress, thank you guys for the community for reaching out. Some people have messaged me on Discord asking about their deck techs and stuff, and I loved every second of it. Casey, that was one of the cool things actually, was when I was playing Casey, he was like, "Oh, I got this really cool deck tech that I did for my life burst, and I hope it plays against you because I think it's good for this matchup, and I want to see your reaction." And it won him the game, and then he was like, "This is it, I did it." And I was like, he's like, "Do you think it's good?" And I was like, "Well, you're winning now, so yeah." Can't be mad to be blown away by something like that. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there were a couple surprises on my end as well. And outside of just like our local community or selectors like you, we actually you ran into somebody that I had played against in the previous ceremony.
It's true.
I think I told you guys last podcast that there was another card jockey player, and it was the only mirror matchup we had, and we had such a great time because we didn't have to explain our cards to anybody. We just like knew what was going on. It was a very standard card jockey, but you played against him.
It's true. It's true. He did, and then he was like, "Is she wearing that hat?" And I was like, "Yeah,
absolutely.
She's definitely wearing the card jockey hat right now."
Good luck hat. Didn't really help me this ceremony. Anyways, all right. So do we want to talk about...
Let's talk about some wide meta stuff before we do a deep dive into Nova.
Okay.
And I think starting off with the thing that you said is right. There was so much card jockey.
Oh my god.
I played 4 rounds of card jockey.
Can I just say something? Nothing hurts worse than being beat by your favorite team.
Yeah.
My dudes, I thought what we had was special.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is there's just so much card jockey, and
it was a lot.
And I'm surprised by that. It was not something I figured when I did our meta analysis when I was, and you guys will see it on the screen right now. I'll start flashing it up, and I'll leave it up here the whole time.
So fancy. Look at that.
What we do at the local Atlanta scene is we do this analysis where we look and we play a ton of matches against the gauntlet decks that I build, and we refine the ones that you guys see online as we're refining them for the tournament. And I'll put up I'll show up some updated versions of the decks because they've changed in concept since the last time I put up the decks. And we just play them a ton against each other. We jam it, right? And we keep track of winning and losing, and it tells us how much the win-loss ratio is, what percentage is this deck favored against the other percent. You'll also notice on it that there's a weight number, right? Mm-hmm. This is my little bit of my data analysis background showing.
What do you call that? Cascading algorithms?
Cascading equations.
And mathematical.
You'll see there's a weight, right, on the side. And the weight is what we think the meta is going to be. So, for example, we thought that Hirana was going to be 40% of this tournament.
With a large second portion being card jockey.
Yeah. I think card jockey was 12. This
is our assumption just because we know that Hirana is not only a popular deck, but it's a cheaper deck to get a hold of. And it's very new user friendly. Did well last time. Card jockey is kind of the same way. It doesn't take much to update that deck between boxes, and also it's a very popular deck, and it's proved to work really well.
It's true.
So
and what ended up happening was we put that weight, and then the bottom numbers that you're seeing is basically what's this deck's win percentage if you weight it against the meta. And so I did that. I put my initial analysis in there, and I saw by a landslide Nova was probably the strongest deck. And the funny thing about that is, again, data is not just what you read it to be, but what you interpret it to be. If you were to update that number with the amount of card jockey that I think there was, which is probably Hirana and card jockey swapped, that number should go down for Nova. I think it's still positive, but it should go down for Nova because I do not think card jockey is a good matchup for Nova. I don't. In testing versus our version that I think is very refined, I'd always lose, pretty much. But I think card jockey, the ones that I went up against were maybe not exactly teched to fight the long game, and were probably more teched to fight Hirana. I don't think Hirana had a great showing this time around.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say I was very much not at the upper echelons for a majority of the game.
Well, here's the thing. You saw...
So I saw... Mostly what I saw was card jockey with, like, a single splash of her on it.
The lower echelons had card jockey, and I can tell you from the higher tables, they had card jockey.
Good spread.
Unlike the last time we did a ceremony where the top tables were completely different than the bottom tables.
Oh, yeah. We kind of had, like, a settling in the water, as it were.
It was like Hirana, card jockey, and some Musica Madoka decks diagram went up to the top, and then everything else was in the bottom tables.
Yeah.
So it was wacky.
What's that scientific term? I think it's called a solution when you have particles in water that sinks to the bottom over time, and a suspension is when they don't.
Yeah.
So in the last science. So in the last ceremony, we had more of a solution type of meta, and now we have more of a suspension type of meta, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how much more wider it is.
Mm-hmm. So to go into broad strokes in the meta, just from the things that I've seen now guys, I'm going to be honest with you, right? That fifth place that I got today was hard-earned.
Yeah.
I have been working... Tiffany's seen me. We were on vacation and I was still testing things.
You brought your entire library of stuff in case you wanted to switch cards out.
I brought the entire gauntlet.
Not only were we playing against each other with the gauntlet and the decks that we were planning on bringing to the ceremony, you were playing against yourself. Like,
I was shadow boxing.
I would wake up in the morning and come out to our like card table, and there would be 2 decks out where you had just been playing both decks at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what training for a tournament kind of looks like.
I practice so much.
You really do.
I feel like I have my finger on the pulse for this meta, like to an unholy degree. Like I should take a break because I think I know. I think like it's like that one guy with the meme with all the like the equations going on in the background.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like because like even like and that's the things. Even small little percentage gains really matter at those top tables.
Yeah, we're getting Olympic fractions is what I call them.
And I felt like I knew secrets other people didn't. But again, that had a lot to do with me asking a crap ton of people for stuff, what their opinions were on stuff, getting more opinions than just mine. Playing against a ton of people in our local scene, even playing some people on just webcam, just to be like,
I need some practice, or I want to play something different.
Like for example, I threw my stuff up from that I had for Madoka and Musica in front of Bill. I was like, Bill, you got first place last time running one of these decks. Can you give me some advice? Things like that,
Yeah.
And so I here's what I've learned broad strokes wise. The meta's slower now. Hirana still will get the job done hyper aggro. But I think it might be correct to run Hiranas with rim lights because you need to slow other aggro decks down a little bit. I think it's just, I think that the time that you run a hyper beat face aggro deck is starting to come to close. That being said, I still think the right Hirana to go for is the one that makes your opponent discard 3 cards with the raise and uses go to the top. I still think you're trying to get Nobunaga out. I don't think the deck has changed all that much, but you do need to take some consideration for the fact that the meta has slowed and now white walls will exist in places that you weren't expecting it for either, right? Including card jockey. So you need to make some considerations for that, which means that you probably need to run some amount of what do you call it? Eternal influences, because they just vanish target Signy, period. And then you might... I
ran into a couple of those, yeah.
Yeah, and you might need to make some considerations for the fact that maybe you should run Globe, because it can vanish 12k or less.
Globe.
And maybe you run less Nobunagas, because you're now running more spells in general. That's my gut feeling on it.
Yeah, Rise Signies are a little odd, and I think we've spoken about this before, is that sometimes... they can really help to flip a game around when you just need something that's going to be huge and maybe blast through something.
Yeah.
Like they usually come with pretty good removal, but for the most part, they kind of end up acting like a spell you can't use yet.
Right.
Which, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but what isn't in Wixoss?
Right. I think Rubelites were good, but again, I never did enough like aggro over aggro testing because I settled on Nova pretty early. So I think Rubelites are still pretty good because they don't stop vanishing, they just make vanishing more annoying. And I think you probably still want to run some amount of Ramels. I know it's strange because I'm just like, yeah, you should think about trying to get big effects, vanish 12k or less now, right? Stop running Nobunaga is something I just said. And then I'm also being like, yeah, but Ramels are great and they only vanish 3ks or less.
Well, there's a balance to every deck
You're
for
right.
sure.
The difference is Ramel is a level 1 and Nobunaga is a level 3.
A level 3
which means that
rise.
Right, which means that you're playing it in the late game, and in the late game you might need bigger removal to the point where I actually think it might be correct to run less Deafening Infernos, which feels like heresy saying.
That might be interesting, because if you pull them early, it's almost like you're winning more if you're running a no limit deck, because then you're vanishing like a Lancelot with minus 10k, and it's almost overkill if it wasn't so cheap.
Right.
But if that were the case, I would rather vanish a Lancelot with a Lancelot.
Yeah, my point though being is just that you need some amount of concession to the fact that you need to vanish bigger now. But not going overboard, because the truth is it's a bad matchup for you to play against Nova, Madoka, or Musica. And all of them are running big walls. And that's okay. You're allowed to have bad matchups. I think some people go overboard trying to tech against something that's a bad matchup, and then they lose their core and are not quite good in general. I think that's fine. Then I would say with Card Jockey, the one thing that I've seen overwhelmingly, I got really good at the Card Jockey matchup, which helped a lot. I ran into 4 of them for this one. And I won every single Card Jockey matchup. And the thing is, I don't think Card Jockey's good is got a bad matchup against Nova. I think Nova loses to Card Jockey most of the time. However, I saw a lot of Card Jockeys just really be beat face Card Jockey and not go, I need a plan B because the meta slowed a little bit. But I also just feel that you're a Card Jockey player. You agree with me, I think, on this, and tell me if you don't.
Okay.
If Card Jockey doesn't win by turn 3 when they Endless Punchline, they don't win unless you have a plan B that's like, no, I was expecting if the game goes to turn 4, turn 5, I have a backup plan, I can still win.
Yeah. You have to kind of be one or the other. Like, you either have to win at turn 3 by being the beatdown Card Jockey, or you have to be like, okay, I need to win at turn 3.5 for max, because Card Jockey they just don't have the gigantic wall creatures that's going to stand up against Nova, or even, like Musica or whatever. Like, anything that runs big creatures, I just really haven't seen a Card Jockey deck that can last beyond turn 4.
Right.
I've only seen them max out at like turn 4.
And we started testing this. You started testing it mostly, not me. Silent Assassin.
Yeah. I would run Silent Assassin. It's not bad.
It's ridiculously good. Now, I've heard people say, well, hold up. If I'm going to have the enter to Silent Assassin, I'll use it on Crossfade. You don't have time to do that. You're using Crossfade to vanish something during attack phase.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. How many times have you actually done the 5? Never, right?
The 5 of what?
The 6 enter that is required to Crossfade.
That's really rare.
Yeah.
Only if you're like really like gunning for it and you're really trying to be late game. Otherwise, Card Jockey, while it holds a little bit more enter than the classic Hirana No Limit, it's still pretty low on enter. And I was actually talking about this to one of the players I had played against, where I was like, if you're going to enter starve somebody, I would target Hirana No Limit and Card Jockey. And specifically, Card Jockey has an issue with holding on to enter because everything's really expensive in that deck, including the grows. So you have to have grows that are modular like that, but the likelihood of you actually being able to pay for the full effect is not likely. I think I've only done that twice.
Right. And that's why I like Silent Assassin, because Silent Assassin comes out turn 4, turn 5, right? It's a late game card. But it comes out when you have the enter, and you're not spending the enter on anything else. You've already done your filtering. You've already done your Endless Punchline. You no longer need to play Handle, get something else. You don't, right? Unless you're up against a discard deck, in which case you might consider it. But I'm going to be honest with you.
Unlikely.
The games that I was winning against myself and with my friends playing playing our version of Card Jockey were the games that the Card Jockey player went, okay, well, I'm going to start now focusing on getting... No, you just need to field 3 a turn. If you can field 3 a turn, you don't need to go all in on trying to filter. You only do that early game. You've endless punchline. It's been successful. Let your enter accrue a little bit. Play Silent Assassin. At this point, Nova, Musica, and Madoka don't have good ways to deal with that anymore because either their assists have been used up to stop your aggro, or they can't affect the board. Senga can prevent a damage.
Well, you know what else is great about Silent Assassin? It goes back to something that we just spoke about earlier. The Signies are bigger now.
Yeah.
Especially when you hit turn 3.5 to 4. So the good thing about Silent Assassin is that it is dependent on your opponent's field.
Right.
Which, more likely than not, just coming from now I've played a bunch of Musica matches, I got big creatures turn 2.
It's not just Nova that's walling.
Yeah, it's everyone.
It's not just Nova being like,
of decks
here's my level 2 Ishii, that's 12k, followed by 12k, followed by 12k. I have a field 12ks, right? Musica does that. It has Langling, Phalaris.
Sorry, everyone.
Langling, Phalaris, and Kayasumi. Madoka can do it. They might even be 13k depending on what they do. That's my point. Is we are past the point where
I'm sorry, my allergies are bad. I'm really sorry. I know we're trying to be so serious, but I gotta sneeze.
Hey, there was someone who sneezed in the tournament with me, and he sneezed just like I do, with everything that he has. And he was like, oh. And I was like, can I relate to you for a moment? If I had 3 wishes from a genie, my first one would be to get rid of sneezes. I hate sneezes. Now everyone knows it, but that's the truth. I would.
Well, thank you for allowing me to sneeze. I'm so sorry. I know that really doesn't do it for some people, and I appreciate you all for being patient with me.
Before you're interrupting sneezes, you were saying the walls exist in a lot of decks now.
The walls exist in a lot of decks now, so Silent Assassin, or even just giving something Assassin. We're not even talking about Double Crush and Lancer and all that stuff is really good. Assassin might be the thing.
Yeah, it's good.
Because now you're actually starving them of enter. You're still getting your damage in, and you don't even care what size they are.
Exactly, totally, 100%. It's a good tech for Card Jockey to be running.
Food for thought.
And I mean the other thing that you can do is you can run some amount of Kayasumi.
Kiyosumi?
No, not Kayasumi. Sorry. Sorry, I'm brain farting on the name. The new one that just came out. Komai. The
white one that lets you attack multiple times with your Lyric.
Yes.
Devastating in Card Jockey.
Super good. Attacking 4 times. Great.
Lion can already attack like 3 times. Okay, let's talk about the ideals, right? Lion can already attack 3 times because of Endless Punchline. They can attack up to 3 times because of their once-a-game ability. And now they can attack twice with Komei? Are you kidding me?
Problem is, slots are tight. You're running 4 Arquin. You're running 4 maps. How much Komai can you fit in there?
2.
Yeah, 2 is probably the correct answer. So you can't people who use the argument for Card Jockey being like, well, you can use Komai to get that end game. You can't reliably do it. I also seen people run end of turn in Card Jockey, and I think that's wrong. Please don't kill me if you guys are the people who are doing it.
But it has Card Jockey on it. What do you mean?
It's true. Here's my hot take.
And it's not end of turn, it's end of turn.
Well, it's end of turn when I play it.
End of turn.
Here's my hot take. End of turn is got 2 things going for it. One, it stops. Yes, it can stop good dig, and that's a good thing. I've done that before. You really need to plan when you do that, though, because it's if you're not actually interrupting their flow of what they're putting on the field, it's you didn't affect the board at all. You just used a piece to not affect the board at all, and that sucks. So you have to time it right if you're doing that. Otherwise, what I did it mostly on was, am I playing an aggro deck? If yes, and they go to do something to remove one of my Signy so that way they can attack through to my Life Cloth, I end of turn. because it's saving. It's a 0 enter, save me a life cloth at that point.
You know, I never thought of it like that.
And
doesn't it have 2 abilities?
It does. The second ability, which needs to be used more often. Again, I did it 50-50 in this tournament. So thinking about your countering stuff, not usually happening. Normally, I use it as a consistency piece to either get Demeter, Komai, or Folklore.
Does it get it back from your trash?
For my trash, to my hand.
Why would that work in Musica, or does that have to be a white-green?
It could work in Musica, and here's why. All of the things that I said benefit slow decks. Card Jockey is not a slow deck. And so
it's sort of like a slightly slow fast deck, or like a slightly faster mid-range.
I think it's an aggressive mid-range deck, right?
Aggressive mid-range, yeah, that's about right.
And all of the things that I said benefit control or stall decks. That's why I think Musica benefits from it. That's why I think Madoka benefits from it. That's why I think Nova super benefits from it. I don't think it's all that great in Card Jockey. I think you should run Silent Assassin instead. Moving on from Card Jockey, because we've been talking about it for far too long. Musica, Madoka. They're basically the same decks that you were running last time, but you need to make some conceits to the fact that Nova exists and is a bad matchup for them, because Nova will make them run out of gas sooner by doing discard effects, and then those decks don't really top deck very well. So because of that, you might want to consider effects like Trouble as a 1-of in the deck, because drawing 3 cards is good.
Yes. Actually, if you have Trouble in your opening hand, I did something fun. I had Trouble in my opening hand, and I hadn't grown my assist Madoka yet, so I just discarded Trouble to do the same thing it was going to do for a lot cheaper.
Yeah. You were up against an aggro deck, I remember, specifically for that one.
Yeah, I think so.
So Trouble's not great against aggro, except its Life Burst is good against aggro. So you should use like, the thing is with Madoka and Musica, you have so much draw discard effects and so many ways to like get stuff back from the trash that you can actually kind of tech with 1-ofs, 2-ofs, and you've got enough dig to get there that it's actually not terrible to do some 1-ofs, 2-ofs. Things like Digger, for example, to exceed and then remove a 12k instead of running your normal Enervating Melody. Or the big one that you and I are using and is super fancy and fun, and don't use this if you're up against No Limit unless you've got it. Iresh. Iresh is the one that crushes your own life cloth to wipe the board.
I think it's Iresh Kagal.
Yeah, you got it. I just believe in Iresh.
Do you believe in Iresh?
Yeah.
That's from Daniel Thrasher. If you guys like really funny piano videos. He's one of my favorite content creators right now.
Iresh, right, wipes the board clean, and that's good against Nova.
Oh, it's a pretty card too.
It also costs no ener to do it, and its Life Burst is good, negative 10,000.
Well, you say it costs no ener to do it, but it does cost something.
2 life cloth. You're right. It's not a small number.
That's not us. And you don't even crush your own life cloth. You trash them.
Yeah, you trash it.
It doesn't go into your ener because that would be so OP.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
But the games that you play it, you win.
I mean,
that's the truth. And if someone, I said I'm scared of Silent Assassin because it's attacks on board late game that I wasn't expecting, I'm super scared of that card. You shouldn't be running as more of a 1-of. It should just be an out to Nova that you can occasionally go for. You should keep the same core of your deck, but then run that as an out.
Mm-hmm. It did come in handy my last game.
Wait, is it a 13k too?
Yes.
It's huge.
It's massive. Listen, it's a level 3. It's a 13k. It's a black Signy. It's beautiful, yeah, okay? It's gorgeous as a foil. And it's got put 2 cards from your life cloth into your trash and wipe your opponent's board.
Yeah.
Clean. And they don't even go in the enter. They also go in the trash.
Yeah.
So, and then the life burst is target Signy on your opponent's field gets minus 10,000 until end of turn.
Again, this is the case of one of these things
wiping.
where the life burst is actually good against aggro. And the and if you don't need it, you can enter it and call it a day.
Yeah. But yeah, I would probably do one of those, because if you do 2 of them up against a deck like No Limit, it's gonna be a short game.
Run Xenocluster for both of them. I took out the Chime from Madoka, and I put in 2 Thrilling, and I haven't looked back. You need to make sure you hit those things, but with Music Dolphin and your other draw discard effects that you have, you can always put together a Hijikata and a Gagiel. You're fine. You've got it. You've got enough power to get that done reliably. So I took out Chime and I replaced it with Xenocluster, and it made the Nova matchup much better. Anyone? There's so little Xenocluster being played. It's a crime. You should say, is my piece helping me win the game? My second piece, is it helping me win the game as my plan B? And if it's not, then I should run end of turn or Xenocluster, depending on what kind of deck I am.
Yeah. You make good points.
Yeah.
What other decks do we need to talk about?
Okay. We talked about No Limit. We talked about that. We talked about Uchu. We'll talk about Uchu in a second because we'll talk about Nova. If you're playing Tamago, the freeze package is incorrect. It's correct to go all in on a discard package. That's one of the decks that I actually run Chime and Hijikata in, because you just need to get discard. It's a bad Nova deck, though. Just at the end of the day, you could run Nova and it would be better. But it is the deck that runs what is it called? Robin Hoods, and it's good in that deck.
Oh my god.
I'm not joking. It is Robin Hood's fine too over there.
I believe you. You know, it's such a like, what is going on here moment, but then when it works pretty well.
Totally.
And then you're mad.
So I think that's all of the teams. I wouldn't run Ancient Surprise. Period. I just wouldn't.
One day.
If you were going to run Ancient Surprise or Senga, if you were going to run Senga, you should just run Bang. And you should run a Bang Dream Team. And the Bang Dream Team should be something like that I was using, something like Tamago, Bang, and Love It. And you should use the Love It that costs 3 enter and gives things Lancer, Assassin, and Vanishes. That is nuts.
Yeah.
You just take your diagram matchup and you just skyrocket it with your win rate by going, here you go. And then they're like, I wasn't ready to clap, but I have to clap everything. Crap.
I literally had to do that today. I had a forced Madoka clap because my opponent did that Love It. And I was like, well, I could die now, or
I could be handicapped for the rest of the game.
Or I could be handicapped for the rest of the game. Yeah, like that was. I mean, I lost that game. Spoiler alert. But
yeah, it's good. It's good. It's only good there because you get.
It was a threat.
Because you can do the enter, and the way that Bang, the way that you have to order sort of Bangs grows in order to make it work.
That was actually against my CJ, a card jockey VJ Wolf center matchup, which was interesting.
So, yeah, and that makes sense because that Wolf can get enter as well. So
yeah, exactly.
So, those are everything, but I will say one other thing. Sandbaka, not good against most of the meta. I'm not making a meme here. I know people are gonna think I'm making a meme. It has like an 80% win rate against Nova.
Dun, dun, dun!
It's stupid. Because I was like, this is not a good deck. Why am I losing to it constantly when I was playing myself? And the answer is, Nova wins through a combination of attrition, discarding your opponent's stuff, and basically recurring guards to turn off the Elrig attacks. Right? They win by just constantly recurring things from their trash, so you're fueling them by making them discard. And then they are able to grind just as long as you. So you take the attrition thing doesn't matter, And then because they negative things on the board, it's stupid. They end up becoming the quote-unquote discard deck because they get rid of your walls and then you have to draw them to replace them, so you're constantly replenishing your field, which is basically holding no hand. So
that's bad for... That's honestly just bad for any deck that's running big creatures. Big Signy.
And Ange's level 2 can get rid of 2 things on the field. Okay, that stinks. I can bang De Capo away from that at least. And then they do it again with their piece, Samba Carnival. And it's like, you're just like, no, I can't. The walls are there for a reason. Stop taking them away. It's
basically Nova's building walls, and Sandbaka's like, wow, what a lovely gate.
You drop, and then they're also being like, you dropped this, and you're like, no, I made you drop that. Don't pick it back up. No, stop.
Toko coming out the dark horse. Although I don't think we saw any Sandbaka. Was there any
no, it's
Sandbaka
true.
in the ceremony?
Andrew from Replayworks was 100% commentating, so there was no. I assume there was no Sandbaka because he's such a Sandbaka stan.
We'll have to check the full deck lists later on today. I don't know if they released the full ones. They released the top 16.
I don't think they released the top 16 yet.
Okay, they said that they were going to though.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I'd be happy if they did, but
I know there was an odd deck in there somewhere.
No, they didn't release the things yet. So these are all just hearsay.
Hearsay, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Well, speaking of all that, what a wonderful segue this is gonna be. Do you want to talk about some like highlights that you had in the game, like plays that you thought were particularly clever?
Sure.
I have a couple.
Yeah. Let me hear yours first.
Okay. Let's see. I have my little notes here, so give me one moment to look them over. Okay. So the first game I played was against August, who also goes by Autumn. Friend of the show, hello. Thank you so much for being here. That game actually taught me a very valuable lesson, which was that when you are playing Musica against a card jockey lion deck, or really just any typical card jockey deck, Salvage the Future might actually work against you. Because what I found out happened is that she had a lot of cards in her deck at the time. And I was like, wow, that seems like a lot, but I don't see any reason why I wouldn't Salvage the Future against a deck like Card Jockey. You know what I ended up doing? Thinning the deck for her.
Yeah, because
which is something that Card Jockey does the entire game. And if you're putting like 3s at best, 2s at worst, hopefully, at the bottom of your deck, what you're doing is you're just skimming it off the top.
Yep.
So then when they shuffle, what are they gonna get?
No.
All the stuff they just put at the bottom. And like, here's the thing. I milled her down to 1 card. 1 card to the bottom. And wouldn't you know, first of all, how do you shuffle 1 card? Yeah. Anyways. And wouldn't you know it, it was going for 3, in for 3 attacks, and I was like, that was dumb. So there were two other Card Jockey games that I decided to like wait on one, and I was like, I'll just deal with whatever Endless Punchline is going to be. But then, at least I know I'm not playing into their game strategy.
You're forcing them to have an 80% chance to do 100%. And to be clear here,
I'm almost like kind of interrupting the flow by being like, no, I see you thinning your deck. I will not help you.
Right. You're basically saying, if you have 18 cards in the deck and I thin you down to 15, then those last 3 that are there are all going to be level 3s, and that screws me. So you're basically saying I can't turn this on until that happens. Yeah, well, I hear you.
What's it called? I'm diluting their probability.
Yeah.
Instead of increasing it.
Yep.
So the only way that I would say to go ahead and mill them 15 before they get their endless off is if you can mill them down all the way. Like if they're a really efficient deck filtering player, you could probably get away with it.
Yeah.
Or if you had a Langling on the field and they were like, yeah, I have 20 cards. Well, there you go. If they don't remove the Langling, you mill them 5, then you follow it up with Salvage and you're good. And then they don't get to go off. But if you can't guarantee that, I actually might recommend that you wait a turn and then just bulk up for the Endless and then try and get your full salvage in after they've drawn a couple cards after. The other highlight I had was I actually prevented a, what's it called? A glory grow.
Yeah.
It felt very clever and almost like, and you can, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is how this works. So, you know, feel free to correct me and have a conversation in the comments down below. What ended up happening is I had 2 Signy on the field. They had 2 Signy on the field and they were matched up. So we both had open lanes. And then they filled with a creature in my open lane. So they were going to attack through with that. And they were at their level 3. So they declared Glory Grow. And I was like, okay, I have Sangha and I can pay for their full ability.
Well, you couldn't pay for the full ability. You were 1 short.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's the other clever thing I did. So what I did is I had, that one cost 6. That's the expensive one.
It's expensive.
So for the full effect for Sangha, it cost 6. And I had 5. So what I did is I Xeno'd to enter charge 1, paid the 2 to vanish the one that was in the open lane, and then paid the rest to prevent damage.
No guard necessary.
No guard necessary.
It feels good. As a Bang DeCapo player, it feels great to prevent a glory grow.
It almost felt illegal because I was like, wait, does this work? And it does, because here's the thing about glory grow. Remember, it's very important. It is 1 attack that is gaining double crush.
Correct.
So if you prevent 1 damage, you prevent both.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God. I still ended up losing that game, but that was a highlight for that game.
I had a couple highlights, but the number 1 highlight, aside from, I made a mistake on stream, just to be clear here, if anyone needs to know, I made a mistake on stream. I didn't harmony. I was trying to rush and I was a little distracted. And again, I was nervous that I was at table 1.
It's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I didn't harmony, and so because of that, the judge came in and was saying it was an irreparable game state. I was like, I think it's repairable. All I need to do is tap my L rig. And we were gonna get issued a double game loss, but luckily,
which is crazy, by the way.
Yeah, I don't want to get too hard in it. The judges have a hard time. This is a big ceremony. Blah blah blah. I get it. They inevitably came back and said, just to do a warning, especially because my Casey, my opponent, went to bat for me and was like, let's use this as a learning experience and show stream that we're supposed to do this. And I was like, yeah, if my opponent doesn't have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it. It doesn't affect anything, and it's a repairable game state. Plus, neither one of us got a warning yet. Can we not get a double game loss and instead you can just warn me? He was like, we'll warn both of you. I was like, great.
And
that's how it should be. Judges should be lenient at the beginning and then harsher down the line.
Yeah.
So I made a mistake, but then literally after every time that I had, trust me, I harmonied correctly.
Oh, and you harmonied very clearly.
Yeah, I pointed to it and then gave a thumbs up to the stream as sort of a joke, even on myself, being like, look, I did it right this time.
Yeah, that's definitely something. It's hard to remember harmony.
Yeah, I mean,
for real, because sometimes when you're like harmonying stuff, like you don't really do a lot with those assists.
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really like affect the game.
My point is, look, I got 5th place and I still made a pretty big mistake that almost cost me everything. So it happens.
It does happen.
And the big highlight though was I played a very wacky game against Jockey where I discarded them a lot in the early turns, and that's how one of the ways you win as Nova against Jockey. And I discarded them a lot, and I made their hands super awkward. And then that was one of the only times that I actually spell cut in with an end of turn and made them not play a good dig, because I knew it would screw their hand, and that was my way to get out of this. And he had no level 1s or level 2s on turn 3 or on turn 2. So you couldn't put a field out there.
Ooh.
So it came back to me and he had an empty field. Now you gotta remember, Nova on level 3 bounces something.
Right.
And I did
as an enter ability,
right.
Correct?
So I did the unthinkable. I didn't grow Nova. I said skip growing Nova, and he was like, what? And I was like, I have a field of level 1s. They're gonna deal the damage. I just won't grow. So I just didn't. And then I grew on the next go around, and it opened up a hole for me to I was...
The confidence it takes to do that.
It was insane. I was like, I'm either going to lose this game or I'm not, but I'm going to have something to talk about at this point. So, yeah, that was my highlight, is that I, like, did the craziest play That's the only time I've ever not grown something to full. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the correct play there.
I mean, yeah, you can't stop entering abilities from happening if they don't have a cost.
Mm-hmm. But there's also nothing to do it, so it wouldn't have mattered. But
you're also playing a deck where your best case scenario always relies on you making the most out of the cards that you have.
Correct.
So if you can't make the most out of you growing to a level 3, like it feels like a waste, maybe.
And it worked perfectly fine because you know why? When they cleared my field because they were little dudes, I banged a capoed and prevented all the damage anyways because I was already level 2 and that's fine.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too outrageous. I think it was the right move.
Yeah. Do you have any other highlights? Because I have one more.
Okay, go for your highlight.
Okay. In the last game that I played, it was against No Limit Hirana. It was extremely close. Really close. We were both down to knockouts. And straight up, I had nothing on my field. And they had a Nobunaga and a Rose Quartz and a Servant. Mm-hmm. So they had a full field with 2 really bulky Signies on the field. I had nothing. Mm-hmm. It passed the turn to me. I have like 2 Signies in my hand. One of them's a Servant. Yep. Oh my lord. Mm-hmm. And I top decked an Ereshkigal.
Yeah, that's your out.
And
you had like no enter either.
I had no enter, but you know what I did have? 2 life cloth. Oh yeah, that's right. We weren't at knockouts. I was just so like, but they were at one card.
Well, they probably were going to knock you out in the next turn.
Well,
you were out of stuff.
We'll get to that. So everybody's fully grown. They had 1 life cloth. I had 2. And I top decked an Ereshkigal. And I told them, I was like, all right, strap in because it's going to get very weird. and I placed it down and I was like, I will put 2 of my life cloth in the trash and toss your whole field into the trash. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, dude, I don't know. I have 1 of these in my deck.
This is a wacky card.
I have 1 in my deck. And then I ended up swinging in with a full field of Signy because I was able to fill it out with the other stuff that I drew. And we actually went back to after I won, and then we submitted our results. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the words. We actually rolled it back, and I was like, okay, what if I didn't pull this and I played the other stuff that was in my hand? Like, what if I couldn't have any removal, which was going to be the case. I didn't have any other removal.
It's a good thought process to practice.
So we went back through it, and literally their next turn they would have won because I didn't have enough. I couldn't remove anything on their field, so it would have been an extreme slow burn for me, but I also didn't have any defense because I was fully grown.
Yep.
So if they removed one thing, pretty much I was going to be gone.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a really good game.
So this is not so much a highlight as I did think it was pretty funny. And if he's listening, then he can laugh at this.
Please chime in the comments if this was you.
So in round 6, I played against Anthony, another person from ReplayWorks.
Ooh.
And this is the last highlight.
Shout out to ReplayWorks.
Then we'll talk about Nova. But yeah, so it's known on the content creator circle that Tiffany and I made Life Burst podcast playmats that we use, and because we were like, if we're on stream, we want to rep it, right?
Yeah.
So,
but we don't. Yeah.
I like made a joke because I saw that he had a Replates Works that had the zones also on it, custom made like we did for ours, and I was like, oh, trying to catch up over here, huh? He's like, yeah, it was a good idea, and I was like.
I do love a mat with zones, I gotta say.
It's true. I prefer it.
Okay. I mean, I guess the ceremony mats are nice too.
It's true. I'm glad I got one.
All right, let's talk about Nova. What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about Nova. Why is Nova good? Why is it worth talking about in the meta? Does it get worse or does it get better as the meta progresses? How does it function? How's it built? I'm going to throw up the deck list that I used during this so people can follow along. And it's a pretty standard Nova build. The only spicy deck in it really is that I am running a Arcwing. Just one Arcwing. It would have been nice
Just one?
Yep, it would have been nice to get top 4, so I could have used that one of Arcwing that said congratulations, but no, I got 5th. It's fine.
One Arcwing for good luck.
But there's a reason for it. The whole point of Nova is to put up walls, and then has a turn 3 configuration that you're constantly aiming towards. And you just play that, you basically replay that turn 3 over and over and over and over and over again in different configurations. But you need to survive to get there, right? And the goal of the deck is to survive. So you should be taking as little life cloth as possible. And one of my Hirana games, I think around Casey, he was like, we were at turn 4, and he was like, do you still have 5 life cloth? And I was like, yes. He was like, how?
How many was he at?
I think more than me. Nova doesn't. Oh. Nova is a slow burn. You do not get your damage until like turn 6. But yeah. So how do you wall up and survive? And the answer is pretty simple. You turn off the cards that enable hyper aggro. That's Ramels, Lancelots, in some cases Burning Infernos, as well as Eternal Influences 6k and below. And you make it awkward. And the way that you do that is your level 1s are just a fleets of things that are awkward to deal with. You have Typo, it's a 7,000 on your opponent's turn, usually. You have the multicolored, it's a 5,000 on your opponent's turn. On your turn, too. Then you run Zhao Yang, and that is a 3,000, but mostly importantly, it has Shadow Signy, right? Your turn 1, you put out multicolors. Actually, let's talk about before you turn 1, because the Mulligan's really important for this deck.
Well, most times Mulligan, you want a hand of 1s if you can help it, right?
Correct, but I take it even further. I look for a hand of 2 level 1s. Any of the level 1s in this deck will work. And then guards. And if none of them are guards, I immediately pitch them. I don't care if I have...
that's a tall order for 4 cards in a deck.
Right. If I have a 3rd level 1, I pitch the 3rd level 1. I don't look for level 2s. I don't look for level 3s. I don't look for anything but guards. The deck needs guards as much as possible. And guys, I want to explain that I settled on this Nova list, and even though I call this Nova list not fancy, I tried a million different configurations of it. And I settled on certain things. At some point, I was using Freeze, and I was using Great Reversal. I was using Tamago Beating to try some stuff. I was using Robin Hood. I was using Atalantas at one point to try to get some damage in. I was using the electronic level 3 that taxes the opponent's Elrigs. Let's see what else I was trying. I was trying out various level 2s that stick around longer, like Simforce and stuff. I was trying out a lot of crazy stuff. And I settled on this, and it's because the fundamentals work in this deck. And that is, you just look for guards at the front end, plus 2 things to field, right? Because you need to just stop as much bleeding as possible. And the easiest way to stop bleeding is to have guards. Plus, you need guards in your trash in order for you to recur them as Nova.
So you do want to play them. They're not necessarily something you want to like hoard.
No, I just toss them as soon as I get them, because if I can get to turn 3 with 5 life cloth, I'm super favored to win now. Doesn't matter what deck you are, I'm favored to win.
Yeah. Not a lot of decks have the kind of longevity that would hit that and look at 5 life cloth and be like, yeah, this is fine.
I mean, even Anthony was laughing when he was like, I endless punchlined you, and I've been attacking you, and you have 4 life cloth left. I hit for 3 off the endless punchline, and you let it go through. I was like, and so you want to survive, right? And so the only other thing I would say, the only caveat I'd also say to that is against Card Jockey specifically, only Card Jockey. I also keep random drains.
Oh.
Discard is really bad against Card Jockey turn 3 and on. It's incredible turns 1, 2, and 2.
Now, why is that? Because you're not messing with their deck necessarily.
No, it's because it's random discard, and that's super important. Because their deck composition is so skewed to 3 and spell that if you can snag a level 1 or a level 2 out of them, they might not be able to field next time around. And that's literally every game that I played, I did that. And that's how I was able to get a strong win rate against Card Jockey when I'm not favored to win. The next thing that you do is you get to do your grows, and you grow everyone to level 1 immediately. You do not wait. You grow Tamago, you grow Bang, you enter charge, blah blah blah. You get cards in your hand. If you've got the random drains, you use them. And if the opponent Xenoclusters you can't play around Xenocluster in this deck, so you might as well just let them Xenocluster early, and then strip those cards when you hand pie destruction later down the line. I had 3 games where someone has Xenoclustered me, and it helped them survive longer and have a better chance at beating me. So I'm not saying it's bad, but I knew that I was able to get around it with various random drains or hand pie destructions. So I knew my way around it. You play your level 1s. If your opponent is not growing to a level 2 when you pass the turn, you specifically play the multicolored level 1s, not Zhao and not Typo. And the reason is because if it's their level 1, they can Ramel away a thing. They can use their L rigs, which bounce or vanish things pretty unconditionally. But you'd rather them use that on your crappy level 1s that you're rarely going to use anymore past turn 2, instead of doing it towards your Ishikiris and your Folklores and stuff like that. So
yeah, baiting for sure when you have like a more skewed heavy Signy deck is definitely the way to go. Especially against decks like Harana, I feel like, or a really aggressive Card Jockey, because they have no choice but to blast through what you have.
Right. And then the next thing that you play, right? And the reason why you're doing that is because even if you have typos and Zhao's in hand, is you want them to fill out your field for your turn 2. Your turn 2, you're playing your 10,000s or your 12,000s Ishikiri or your Folklores. And then you're going to play Zhao or Typo there because they're unlancelotable. If you don't do this, and this is something I've seen a lot of people just not understand, right? They want to get rid of one of these cards because they think another level 1 might be better. If you don't do this in this order, you open yourself up to getting hit early with Life Crush damage. Because Lancelot just coming in and opening a lane, you can't really do much about it turn 2. I mean, you can, but blowing your 2 ways to deal with your late game threats that your opponents are trying to put out in their last throws of I have a couple cards left in my hands is a way to lose the game overall. You do that because then the only way they can deal with that Typo or that Xiao is to either Deafening Inferno, Enervating Melody, Digger, or what is the last one that Eternal Influence, aka spells. Whoa, you're playing end of turn, and that's exactly what I said you should do. You should stop Life Cloth damage in your turn 1, turn 2 with those spells. That's when you should use that for the spell reason. After that, after turn 3, doesn't matter so much. You can back that up with your L rigs or whatever. So we're going into our turn 2. We play our level 2s at this point, as well as whatever level 1 is buff enough to survive Lancelot and these types of effects. You'll notice that what I'm being very clear here is you are just putting out walls. That's it. Turn 1 and turn 2 feel very lackluster. Other than that, you are not doing anything. You are vanishing your opponent's Signies every turn, though. That's important. You're going to try to run them out of gas in their hand, and the only way that you can do that is with you supporting yourself by vanishing their field. So you can't Enter Starve them. So don't try to Enter Starve with this deck. You get to level 3, and now here's the thing that you need to start piecing together literally every turn, and why it's actually pretty good to have end of turn, because it helps you if you're missing one of these pieces. Your configurations are as follows. There's 3 of them. Komai, Folklore, and Ishikiri Maru. Your other configuration is Demeter, Komai, and Folklore. Mm-hmm. Sorry, did I say Folklore last time? It is Ishikiri Maru, Fenrir, mm-hmm. and Komai. Mm-hmm. Your second configuration is Komai, Demeter, and Folklore. Your third configuration is Fenrir, Demeter, Ishikiri Maru. Okay? You need to piece these together at all points in time, but they do different things. So you want to start with certain things and then end with certain things depending on the matchup that you're playing. Generally speaking, it's important to recognize that the Ishikiri Maru route leaves you with a 12k, 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 mm-hmm. which is good against opponents that can't get over those walls, aka aggro decks. You want to play that. You also might lean to the fact that Demeter plus anything lets you vanish the field, so you can run them out of hands, right? There's times that I've had Komai out there and I've not used it because I wanted them to run out of cards in hand, and the way that I'm winning is by restricting their resources, their options that they can do. The Fenrir also helps you with that because it freezes things. Mm-hmm. But when you're ready to turn on the gas, right? You're really ready to go. That's when you use the combo that is Komai mm-hmm. and Demeter and Folklore. The reason why is because Folklores are a weak link there that can get vanished. Mm-hmm. But you are also putting out 3 damage a turn in that way.
Yes.
You give Lancer to Komai. Mm-hmm. Komai can then attack, vanish something, and then Komai's ability will go off when you attack with your L-Rig, and then you can attack with your L-Rig twice. Mm-hmm. It's very important to recognize, okay, now it's time to turn it on. The other upside to that configuration is because of Demeter, if they get rid of your Komai will get vanished. Then you will enter charge because Demeter's effect. And you basically are paying for Komai to come back on the field downed. Mm-hmm. Then you continue your turn, you just attack with the other 2 because, you can do that. Or you can still trigger Komai's effect and go, cool, go to my L-Rig, attack, and attack, mm-hmm. kind of thing with it twice. It's also important to recognize that a couple other notes that were mattered in my cases. Lancer can't be damage prevented. That mattered a couple times when people tried to prevent my damage, and I go, that's not how Lancer works. Mm-hmm. So you can actually kind of use that to your advantage.
It's a life cloth crush. It's not a damage.
From state-based actions because you vanished out of Sigma. Yep. You should know that it means that Folklores are more important in this deck than you'd think they would be. You should not enter them immediately because you've got to consider having them. Sometimes you also shouldn't grow your assists immediately. And that's not a death sentence in this deck. I think everyone thinks that Nova needs to turn on its ability by Kirbying 7 cards immediately. I would say I did that 60% of the games. The other 40%, I turned it on early with 5 cards. Because there's ways that you can draw cards in this, so you can get your guards, and if you have a guard in hand and you turn it on, then that means your next turn you'll draw the guard. And that's all you need is just have 1 card in hand. You don't necessarily need the card advantage. Especially in this deck, you actually discard quite a bit. Hampai Destruction, I have used 50% on turn 3 and 50% on turn 4. That 50% on turn 3, mind you, sometimes makes the opponent discard for 2 because they're not fully grown, and that's okay. Against some decks, you still want to do that. I do that against Lion because turn 3 and on, they're going to have a full hand, and I can't stop them with that. I can't control it. Mm-hmm. I don't have regular discard. I'm not Tamago. So I just go, discard. Now, you have 2 cards in hand, and I've got a Fenrir out. 3, cool, you discard. Then they go, okay, I discard out a guard, and I'm like, great, that is what I needed. So more or less sometimes because you're not always fielding your level, you're not always having a limit that will allow you. That's another thing you need to consider is limits. Because you got to go, well, I can't just immediately discard my level 1s or enter my level 1s because sometimes I'm going to need to...
Because you might not have fully grown both of your assists.
And then you should think about it and you go, but that's fine. If they get rid of it and they vanish it, I have a Bang to Capo or I have a Tamago in order to stop something. So you then go ahead and you go, that's fine. I actually prefer getting to my level 3 configurations that I'm talking about sooner. And you just don't do it with the level 2, right? Ishi Maru turns into Typo or Procyon. Or one of your other things, one of your other level 1s. And then Folklore turns into Procyon. That's why there's a 1 of Procyon in that deck, is because sometimes I just need to have a level 1 that is also blue to turn on Demeter. Sometimes it happens. And, there are games where I end up and I look at my hand and I go like, I have 2 Komis, I have 2 Demeters, and I have a Fenrir, and I don't have a level 2. And you know what? That's when end of the turn cooks in and you're like, I pick up a Folklore. And people were like surprised when I was picking up Folklore. They were like, out of all the powerful cards in your trash, you're picking up that? And I'm like,
limit.
Yes, limit's important in this. And you need to think things out. I stopped the game that I lost on stream, and it was the only game that I lost. I actually could have won. And the reason why I could have won it was I had a green enter in my hand, and I could have entered it, paid for Demeter, won the game. Right then and there. And I didn't do it. And it taught me that I needed to stop rushing, hit enter, and then really plan out my turn as soon as I got into the enter phase. Not entered yet. I should just plan out my turn now. And then I plan out my turn and do it. Because the worst thing that you can do is put down, especially with Folklore and Demeter, not Folklore, Fenrir and Demeter, you might, if you rush and you put it down and you're not realizing that, let me freeze the 2 lanes that I care the least about and attack the lane that I need to, right? You can mess yourself up. And that's what Fenrir really does. You could put Fenrir and Komai together, and you can enter starve your opponent with that, right? Because you're freezing the 2 lanes that you're going to down those Signies to activate Komai. I found never that was actually useful. The only time I ever found that was useful in testing was against diagram matchups, because their second assist that they play is so costly. You can kind of get around it by doing that sometimes. That is a thing that you can do. But realistically, what you're using the Fenrir as mostly is insurance to be like, okay, these 2 are dangerous and should not attack next turn. AKA, I see a Nobunaga on the field. That's the one that's getting frozen.
Well, especially cards like that have effects that you can keep paying for.
Yeah.
That needs to go goodbye.
Yeah.
Right away.
So that's what I did. To talk about some things that I tried in testing, I tried some freeze stuff. I tried Great Reversal to try to just speed up this deck. The answer is this deck is slow. I almost went to time every single time I played.
Yeah, there's just some decks that you can't make aggro because it's counterintuitive to how they play. And with all of the big creatures and recursion that Nova's doing, and bouncing as well, it just doesn't make sense for it to go super fast.
Yeah, and that's another thing is I tried Tamago beating, and the more and more I played it, the more and more I realized all I'm doing is replacing 1 damage early game with a damage late game if I don't play it. But what I gain by not playing it and drawing 2 means I'm getting closer to my guards. Because you just need those guards. You need them early, without fail. There was specifically a game against No Limit where I was like, I have a higher chance of drawing 2 cards, with my just drawing with my Tamago here, a higher chance of drawing a level 1 than I do drawing a guard. And I literally tossed 4 cards back into my hand, or tossed 4 cards back, and I only had 1 level 1 in hand, which was risky. I got there to get another level 1, but then I also got 2 guards. And I won that game because at turn 5, I had 4 life cloth left. Mm-hmm. They couldn't deal with it.
Yep. And that's the longevity and speed of Nova.
Yeah, it's super slow. But you have to practice with it. Otherwise, you will go to double losses.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Luckily, everyone, I literally, that's another thing too, is at the start of every game, I went open, and then I made it a joke where I was like, look, I'm playing Nova. That means we need to play fast or else it's going to be a double loss. Mm-hmm. Wink, wink. I'm seriously saying we need to play fast.
Yeah, please, for both our sakes.
And everyone was
This is me helping you.
Yeah, everyone was, and I also, like, that was the thing, is like, I was like, I practiced so that I can keep my turns within a minute. Please play fast. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's our ceremony arc. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about or mention today?
No, I think we went over quite a bit. This has been a pretty big of a long episode. I would love to hear other people's what they thought, what they did with the ceremony, what they were excited for. I think the meta shows a lot of card jockey here. I don't think that's gonna hold forever. Mm-hmm. I think that's just a accumulation of people wanted to try out new tech, but also had old cards and maybe didn't get 4 Komais and only had 2. Therefore, card jockey.
Like we predicted, the shipping became an issue for a few people for sure. But it is interesting to see that that decks are going further than they did in the last ceremony. Kind of going back to the solution and suspension example that I gave.
I agree.
Which is really nice. Like, you want to see a spread of people being successful with various decks. Yeah,
if I was going to make a big guess as to what our next meta was going to look like, I'd say it's going to be some mix of Hirana and card jockey. It would be hard to ignore that card jockey was a factor here and will continue to be a factor. More than I expected. So I will admit I was wrong there. And then I think what you're going to see is more, let's see here, probably Ray. There actually was a top placing Ray who we're going to interview later.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then Nova. I think, and then some amount of music of Madoka sprinkled in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be interesting, especially because I think they announced what date the next ceremony was going to be, and we don't have a new set coming out between then and now, so people are really going to be able to nail down their decks.
It's going to be the sunset show of this
sunset show.
The sunset show of this this meta, because it's right at the end of the 0-3 meta.
Yeah.
June 25th, I believe.
All right, we'll look out for it. In the meantime, please make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. We'd love to know how your ceremony went. Maybe if you want to give the stream that Andrew was on a watch, and then come right back here and let us know your opinions of it. We'd love to hear it. And as always, thank you so much, selectors, for joining us. May you always flip a life burst.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next time.